Update. I, 31 male, overheard my fiancée, 39 female, talking to her friends about how she sees me and I'm crushed. Original post. We met in college and remained just casual acquaintances at the time. We both took a couple of the same classes and hung out a few times. Stayed in contact but never too terribly close. We both graduated and a few years later we reconnected after randomly running into each other after we knowingly both moved to the same city. It was around that time that my career really took off. A few senior engineers from my company recruited me for a startup they had been working on. We got a few big clients and VC funding pretty early on, so within a few years, the money really started to roll in. She and I started dating and honestly, up until now, I've been nothing but happy. Things were going great and I felt like I was really close to her. I've been nothing but doting and appreciative of her. This all began to shift last week when I overheard her talking to her friends about how she views me. I had planned to work later than usual but came home early with a stomachache and went to lie on the bed. I must have fallen asleep for about 2 hours. But when I woke up, I could hear her in the living room with some of her friends while they were drinking. The conversation was pretty casual until they started talking about the wedding and our relationship in general. Through the laughter, she went on to describe how she had landed herself the perfect rich schmuck, how she basically controlled me, and how I would give her the life she always wanted. I was just a tool for her to use. Her friends thought it was hysterical and egged her on. I know she was drinking, and I know maybe she was joking, but for me, the trust is gone. I don't feel like I can still marry her when I've heard in her own words that she sees me this way. When she later went to the bedroom, she seemed surprised to see me, but she also assumed I'd been asleep. I haven't confronted her yet and I'm just dreading cancelling the wedding, which is scheduled for next April. My reaction for OP. Wow, OP, I would definitely talk to her first, listen to what she has to say, and then follow your intuition. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Comment 1. You can leave her. I left my fiancée and it seemed impossible to do at the time, but I did it and it was absolutely the right choice. If you were to put yourself in her shoes, could you imagine saying such things? That's all you really need to know. Sorry friend, just know you did nothing wrong. There are serious character issues with her though. Issues she has already chosen are alright with her. Comment 2. I left my fiancée after she cheated on me. She thought I'd just take her back like her exes did. Comment 3. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. I'm so sorry, but at least you found out before you were legally tied to her. Comment 4. Absolutely. This is the most honesty that he is going to get from this woman. She didn't know that he was around and was free to make fun of him to all of her friends and lay out what her plan was. He needs to believe everything that she said. What she says to him after she finds out that he heard is just covering her ass and trying to salvage her golden ticket. And those friends, wow, what a bunch of cruel, shitty people. Now for the updates. Update 1. Sorry if it took me a couple of weeks to post an update, but it's been really hectic. I confronted her for a couple of days after my initial post. I wanted to see if she would be honest, if there was even a chance of working this out. So I initially didn't allow her to know I personally overheard her. I told her I heard a rumor that she had been talking about me that way. She pressed me for a name. But after I refused to give her one, she flat out told me repeatedly that I had been lied to, that she would never talk about me that way. I then told her I personally overheard her, then her entire demeanor changed. I think she hadn't considered that I'd been awake when she had her friends over, or that this was such a common topic of conversation that she didn't know exactly which specific conversation I had heard rumors of. I told her I was calling off the wedding. She then started crying and I genuinely felt bad, but at the same time, I can't really trust her anymore. She left and I have no idea where she went, but I got a few calls from her friends later that night and the next morning. They were the same friends I overheard earlier, so I just never answered. Her dad randomly showed up that afternoon and seemed surprised at what I said. She hadn't given him a detailed reason for why I was calling off the wedding, just that she had lost my trust. He didn't have much to say after I told him, but said I should try to work things out. She came back the next day and I still have no idea where she went, nor do I really care. I was blunt and told her she would need to find a new place somewhat soon. Since then, I've been spending as little time as possible home, and she seems to be gradually removing some of her smaller personal items. It's a mess, and she keeps trying to salvage things, and when that fails, the crying starts. I'm glad I found out sooner rather than later. Final update. My ex and one of her male friends showed up with a U-Haul to get the last of her stuff the weekend after my last post. I didn't trust their chemistry together, but I didn't really care. I didn't even bother to learn if she has a new lease or if she's staying with him. She thankfully left my ring behind, but I don't know what to even do with it. It cost me $15,000 retail, but the resale looks like a fraction of the original cost. I also have a lot of work to do to recoup my deposits for the venue, caterer and planner. Her mum called me the night after she left, but I didn't answer. I honestly didn't want to hear it. I've always had a great relationship with her, but she sounded so much like her daughter that I didn't know if I could take that conversation. I've had a really difficult time emotionally over the last month and a half dealing with this. I've always been a casual drinker, but lately I've been avoiding going home and drinking with old friends far more consistently to avoid having to deal with the fallout. I know it's not healthy, but it's all I could do not to fall apart completely. Some of that spilled over into my work, and I think the other founders noticed. I lead a small DevOps team and do a ton of technical work myself. Because of this, my mistakes are really easy to notice, since they largely manifest in infrastructure breakage, CI/CD outages, and downtime in key applications. I don't know how exactly they learned what happened, but after I mentioned I wouldn't be going to see family during Thanksgiving, the CTO sent me a text asking me if I was home, then showing up with the CEO 30 minutes later, the night before Thanksgiving. The CTO had apparently learned what happened a few days before, and he, along with his wife, had spent most of the day basically making me a feast. It was incredible. Beef bourguignon, porchetta, potato salad, lasagna, deviled eggs, duck roast, to say the least. The CEO brought an incredibly expensive bottle of whiskey and some high-end Japanese A5 steaks. I was brought to tears. I had never been shown this much love and appreciation in my entire life. I will never forget it. We basically just drank whiskey, ate food, and talked for hours. They gave me the rest of the year off and asked me to just make sure I delegated the most time-sensitive work. I'm not even sure of what I'm going to do, but I'm thinking of vacationing in Ireland for a few weeks. Never mind, I have frozen leftovers for weeks. Story 2. Am I the arsehole here for unintentionally getting a midwife fired? Plus update. Original post. Throwaway for anonymity. This also happened a few months ago, but I've recently been told I took things too far. I'm active duty military. My wife and I began trying for a baby about 2 years after we got married, and a few months she got pregnant with our first child. About 6 weeks after she found out, I was deployed for a 6-month stint. Sadly, that meant I would miss all of her OB appointments, except the very first one to confirm she was pregnant. Early in her pregnancy, she decided using a midwife would give her a better birth experience. And I was totally on board because she's the one giving birth and I wanted her to feel 100% confident in the people assisting. It had also been decided that the people in the room, aside from the medical staff, would be me for obvious reasons and one of our mothers. My mum lives about an hour by car from the base I'm stationed at, while her mum lives a 4-hour plane ride away. Ideally, her mum would be able to get there in time. But she loves my mum too and was okay with her being there if labour went fast and her mum couldn't make it in time. Fast forward to me getting back from the deployment and her being really close to giving birth, like during a week close. She was supposed to have an OB appointment that I would be able to go to, but ended up going into labour very early on the morning of the appointment. We go to the civilian hospital and they confirm she's in active labour. I called her mum, who immediately booked a flight that would have gotten her here at about noon. Then my mum, who came to the hospital a few hours later. A while later, the midwife comes in to see my wife and was rude from the start. My wife told her I was back from deployment and she calmed down a little, but was still clearly not happy I was in the room. Especially once I started cracking jokes to try to distract my wife from the pain of the contractions. Then the midwife glared at me and told me to take this seriously and have respect for my wife while she's in pain. I thought her hostility was weird, but was more focused on my wife and doing all I could to support her. As it got closer to noon, my wife was almost 9 centimeters dilated, and so I decided not to go to pick up her mum from the airport and had her take a cab instead, so I wouldn't have to leave her for over an hour to drive to the airport. When her mum did get to the hospital, I left the L&D floor briefly to go downstairs and pay the cab driver, so her mum wouldn't need to. As the cab is pulling up, I got a call from my mum telling me the OB and midwife were there and the baby was coming fast. Of course, I rushed back up there after tossing some cash to the cab driver so her mum and I could be there for the birth. When I got back to the L&D floor, my mum was in the waiting room since she had to step out to make the phone call and also knew she would be waiting outside. I used the intercom to ask to be let back in, and to my surprise, I was denied entry. They said they had an order to not let me or anyone else in to see my wife. That was really confusing, so I asked why, and I was just told I wouldn't be let in, and not to tie them up on the intercom or security would be called. So, the 3 of us waited outside. Since my wife didn't answer her phone as she was actively pushing our baby out, well, over 2 hours later, she was able to call me back and asked where I had been. I told her the hospital staff wouldn't let me in, but I had been in the waiting room trying to get answers for almost 2.5 hours. Long story short, it was the midwife who told the desk staff that I wasn't to be let back in. She lied and said my wife had reported I was abusive and she didn't want me there. So, not only did my poor wife have to give birth alone and without me or her mum there for support, I missed the birth of my daughter. It meant a lot to me to be there to see my baby come into the world because I missed so much of the pregnancy that was ripped away from me because this awful woman didn't like that I never showed up to a single appointment the entire pregnancy, despite being told by my wife that I was deployed. So, with my wife's support, I filed a formal complaint about the midwife and she ended up getting fired by the OB's office. My wife is naturally on my side, but some of our friends have said I was wrong to make such a big deal out of it and taking away the woman's livelihood. Was I the asshole for reporting her, which caused her to lose her job? I'd like the perspective of people outside the situation. Edit 1. I took some advice and contacted JAG, military lawyers, to meet with an attorney about taking further steps. I have a meeting scheduled for Monday afternoon to discuss what can and should be done to ensure this doesn't happen to anyone else in the future. Thanks to everyone who offered support, and screw those who direct message me to tell me I'm garbage for being in the military and deserve to die because they think I hit my wife. You will have a place saved in hell. Edit 2. Since some people are so caught up on me paying for my mother-in-law's cab and the jokes I was making with my wife, I'll clear it up. I made jokes because she asked me to distract her from the pain by making her laugh. We were both making jokes, not just me. I also paid for my mother-in-law's cab because my wife told me to make sure I went down and paid, and also because it was the right thing to do since she didn't choose to take the cab. That was my choice since it was last minute. Now for the update. We met with the JAG attorney on Monday, and it seems like I have a good case for going after her license, as well as a possible defamation lawsuit. She's a certified nurse midwife, so she has a license that can be revoked or suspended. I'm not convinced it needs to be revoked altogether, but I do think she should be suspended for a while and forced to get more training in her field. The attorney JAG assigned to me is a parent herself and seemed genuinely appalled that someone would have to miss the birth of their child because a member of the medical staff used their influence to deny the entry back into the maternity wing, especially when it's for a made-up reason that could have gotten me in a lot of trouble with the Navy. My wife was able to come with me to the meeting and had a brief conversation alone with the JAG. On the drive home, she told me what they spoke about. and basically, the attorney just needed to confirm that everything the midwife said about me being abusive was false and unfounded. When my wife told her I have never and would never lay a hand on her or my child, she asked if my wife felt any sort of emotional distress about me not being there for the birth. She confirmed that she does, and that's when it was decided that we would try to build a case for more than just possible medical malpractice. We don't care about monetary gain. If we were awarded anything, it would go into an educational account for our daughter or be donated to a charity. We are in agreement that the midwife should have to answer for what she did though. She took away a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me. Even if we have more children, I'll never get back the lost experience of not seeing my firstborn come into the world. So, that's where things stand right now. Any further updates will likely be a long way off since there's going to be a pending litigation soon. Thank you to, almost, everyone who commented and offered encouragement. It gave me the push I needed to seek out a legal remedy for the situation. My wife and I are truly thankful. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you.